Tonight, all aboard the Starship Enterprise for the next action-packed adventure in Star Trek Into Darkness.
School's out for summer in Harmony Korine's Spring Breakers.
And Ryan Gosling and Bradley Cooper find being a man is harder than it looks in The Place Beyond the Pines. Hello.
Good evening.
Also tonight, a 40-something is Sweet 16 again in the comedy Camille Rewinds.
And we revisit Jean Renoir's 1939 classic La Règle du Jeu. But first, Margaret, start with Star Trek Into Darkness.
Well, is it possible that Star Trek Into Darkness is the 12th film in the series? Yes, it is, but they stopped numbering them after the 6th. The Starship Enterprise is still boldly going where no man has gone before, but this time the crew, under Captain Kirk, Chris Pine, overstepped their brief when they try to save the people of an outlying planet from an erupting volcano. First Officer Spock, Zachary Quinto, and Kirk are demoted. And then there's an attack on the Starfleet archive in London by Harrison, Benedict Cumberbatch, who has escaped to Klingon territory. Kirk is reinstated along with Spock. His mission, to enter Klingon airspace and blow Harrison to smithereens. But at the last moment, Kirk decides to land in Mufti on the Klingon planet and take Harrison prisoner.
Closing fast, bearing 285.
All right, there, we can lose them there.
You are suggesting that we utilize the passage between the approaching structures. This ship will not fit.
We'll fit.
Captain, we will not fit.
We'll fit! We'll fit! I told you we'd fit.
I am not sure that qualifies.
There is something incredibly endearing about this franchise. We've lived with these characters for many, many years through thick and thin, and some of the times have been quite thin. But this imaginative twisting and turning screenplay by Roberto Orci, Alex Kurtzman and Damon Lindelof is given stellar treatment by J.J. Abrams, who's no stranger to directing high-tech action films after Star Trek and Mission Impossible 3. Benedict Cumberbatch brings a typical British upper lip to his portrayal of Harrison, and the crew, headed by Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto and Simon Pegg, strut their stuff with varying degrees of effectiveness. I was pretty much in there all the way with this particular Star Trek voyage. David?
Well, it is interesting that the whole series has had this incredible reboot, which happened 4 years ago when J.J. Abrams took over. Because prior to that, I mean, Star Trek first came on television in 1966, and the first movie was about 1979, directed by Robert Wise, so it's a long time ago. And then, of course, there have been all the ones in the meantime. But Abrams recast, a younger cast, new actors, gave a very fresh approach to it, and that continues with this one. And I think it, on the whole, works very well. It's not my favourite genre, I have to say. I'm not a Trekkie, and I'm not sort
you
of
don't
wrapped
look like
in all
a
of this.
Trekkie, to tell you the truth.
No, probably I don't.
But,
like Spock, if anything.
But do you know, I found myself being moved by it. You know, and I don't know whether it is that I go back all those years and watching this stuff on television, and it's the characters and the brotherhood of them, and
well, there's all of that.
The honour of them, and I don't know, but I was.
Well, yeah. Look, I understand all that, and this looks fantastic. It really looks, and I think it was a great idea to cast Simon Pegg as Scotty, because he brings that kind of British humour to the part, which is very welcome. But there's really nothing all that new in terms of plot and character here.
David, I mean, what can you do? I thought this, plot-wise, was more coherent than, for example, Iron Man 3. So for that reason, I'm going to give it 4 stars.
Well, I'm giving it 3.5.
Captain on the bridge!
Lieutenant, we have an open channel with Mr. Spock.
The heat's frying his comms, but we still have contact.
Spock!
I have activated the device, Captain. When the countdown is complete, the reaction should render the volcano inert.
Yeah, and that's gonna render him inert.
Do we have use of the transporters?
Negative. Not with these magnetic fields.
I need to beam Spock back to the ship. Give me one way to do it.
Maybe if we had a direct line of sight.
Hold on, wee man. You're talking about an active volcano, sir. If that thing erupts, I can't guarantee we can withstand the heat.
I don't know that we can maintain that kind of altitude.
JJ, when you take on a franchise like Star Trek, how do you keep it fresh for the fans?
I think for me the key is not to approach it like it is a Star Trek movie, but to approach it like it's its own story, its own standalone thing. It's certainly how we approached the first film we did in 2009. And this one, I really wanted to avoid the sequel pitfall of assuming anyone cares. A lot of times sequels sort of begin and they forget to like reinvest you. And so we had to just kind of start over again and make it relevant really by, you know, approaching the characters first and making sure that they were the most important thing, that we related to them, we cared about them, and then all the adventures they go through, you'd go along with them because you care. But a lot of times spectacle takes over and you get numb and nothing has any meaning. So we wanted to avoid that as much as possible. We're talking about your life!
The rule cannot be broken.
Spock! Try to get him back online.
90 seconds to detonations.
Spock over here and I were there. What would he do? The trickiest thing for me on this movie was tonal. Was finding a way to maintain a sense of any reality and any intimacy and any humor and humanity when you're surrounded by such sort of epic scope and scale. It was a very odd thing in the first movie to realize that an establishing shot couldn't be a building or even a city or a continent. It had to be a planet. Like you literally, it screws with your head, with the scale of things. So when you have that kind of scope, but you also want to really be tracking the heart of one character, you're constantly bouncing back and forth between, you know, galactical scale and absolute human, intimate, you know, heart. And that to me was always the thing, every step of the way. So I never was worried about the visual effects. I was never worried about the action sequences or the spectacle. I was always concerned about, will that scene make me laugh? Will I feel when I'm with those people? Will I invest in those relationships? And that was always the trick.
So how important is it in a movie like this to create a great villain?
It's critical. I mean, the classic, you know, phrase that your villain defines your hero is 100% true. And the first film that we did was very much about these people who just come together, these sort of disparate orphans who form a family. And this movie is really about testing that family. They're tested by, I think, an extraordinary villain played wonderfully by Benedict Cumberbatch, who is, I think, one of the greatest actors alive. He's amazing. And it was a lot of fun to have a character who was not just a mustache-twirling ball of rage, but a sophisticated, insidiously brilliant, manipulative guy who you actually connect with and relate to, and you can understand, I think, his emotional life. And that, to me, is the key to any great villain, is you get under his skin and you start to oddly feel for that person, too. And when you start to have compassion for what the villain wants, that, to me, is where you are in the realm of a successful villain.
Movies reflect the time and the place where they're made. And this is a film about internal terror. Is that a reflection, do you think, of what's happening now in the world and in America particularly?
I wish the movie weren't as relevant as it is, frankly. This movie is about a sort of a terrorist among us and having to not just root him out, but get to the bottom of who he is and what he's about. I think that you'll find that while this is very much in most cases, I think, a fun action-adventure film, the themes in the movie, the enemy, the thing that they're up against, is all too real.
That was the interesting J.J. Abrams talking about Star Trek Into Darkness, which opens nationally this week. With The Wonderful Blue Valentine, director-writer Derek Cianfrance took us backwards and forwards in time from the beginning of a relationship to its sad conclusion. His new film, The Place Beyond the Pines, also unfolds in different time frames, 3 over a 15-year period. But this time the events aren't intercut, but are told separately. First is the story of Luke, Ryan Gosling, a heavily tattooed drifter and bike rider who, during a stopover of the carnival at which he works in Schenectady, New York, discovers that he's fathered a son around, joining forces with no-good Robin, the excellent Ben Mendelsohn, to rob banks. The The second story deals with cop Avery Cross Bradley Cooper and his efforts to expose the corruption in the local police force, while story 3 deals with the experiences of the sons of Luke and Avery some years later. Taking his title from the Indian name for the town in which the drama unfolds, Jean-France tells a lengthy but gripping story of the legacy handed down from father to son. And while his new film might not impress quite as much as Blue Valentine, it's at least tackling more interesting material than most Hollywood studio films we've seen since the end of the Oscars season. It deals with ideas, and much of it is dramatically enthralling. And there are excellent performances from Gosling, Mendelsohn and Cooper, plus an interesting supporting cast. Though, sadly, Rose Byrne doesn't have much to do as the cop's long-suffering wife. Margaret, did you like it?
Do you know, I didn't lean in to embrace this film. I leaned back away from it. And it's almost from the opening shot, which I thought was pretentious and self-conscious. And everything subsequently reinforced that impression. Now, I don't know whether it's that you get on a track with a film and you can't get off it, but everything I saw just really disappointed me, I suppose.
It's interesting because I thought the opening shot was terrific.
Yeah, I know. You're meant to think it's terrific.
Yeah.
And,
oh, I see. Well,
yeah,
I was sucked in there.
Yeah, sucker. but you know, it's to me, it's a film about nothing. It's about a film about that you can't escape the consequences of the actions in your life. Now, what is that about? I don't get it. I hated the casting of Emery Cohen as the son of Bradley Cooper. He doesn't look at all like any of his parents. He's the bad seed. It's sort of like, where did this kid come from? I mean, I just felt at the end truly manipulated.
Yeah, you see, I didn't find nearly as many problems with the film. I mean, I don't think it's a complete success, but I was, even though it's a very long film, I was completely captivated by most of it.
I wanted to be. I love Blue Valentine. I can only give this 2.5 stars.
Well, I'm giving it 3.
The Place Beyond the Pines opens around the country this week. French filmmaker, screenwriter, actress Noémie Lvovsky has combined all 3 talents in Camille Rewinds, the story of 40-year-old Camille, who's a bit of a sad case. Her career as an actress is not going well, and she's turning to alcohol as compensation. A leap of faith is required here as the 47-year-old director appears as the 15-year-old Camille and no one notices. It's a brave and rather energetic performance from Lvovsky, although the character of Camille did strike me as totally egocentric, which is always a bit of a turn-off. Going back to the inanities of 15-year-old schoolgirls and boys, for that matter, has its limitations, and Lvovsky manages to make them outstay their welcome. There's not a lot of wit in the film. I didn't find very much of it funny at all, although it is rather touching briefly. The comparison to Coppola's Peggy Sue Got Married from 1985 has been referred to everywhere, and it is very similar, maybe too similar. But finally, I have to mention a rather odd aspect of the film, which is the wallpaper. It has to be seen to be believed. The designers, Frédéric and Frédéric Lapierre, really went to town on the retro stuff. David, did you notice?
I didn't notice the wallpaper. But what I did notice was that this is sort of an unacknowledged remake of a film that I rather like, Peggy Sue Got Married,
yeah.
Francis Ford Coppola. And it annoys me a little bit when I look at the credits to see if somewhere there's some acknowledgement, and of course there isn't. I feel there's something a bit wrong about that. And I think Kathleen Turner did it much better in the original film, because she was much more convincing as a teenager.
Yeah.
And as you say, Noémie Lvovsky is not the least bit, and you have to make a real adjustment, and I found it very hard to make that adjustment. I think the scenes with the mother that she's so protective of are nicely done, but it's pretty long, and I found it a little bit on the turgid side, to be honest. So I'm giving it 3.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm giving it 3 too.
Camille Rewinds is currently screening in limited national release. Spring break seems to be the American equivalent of schoolies, a time when newly liberated and sexually active teenagers head in droves for a seaside resort and have a hell of a good time. In Spring Breakers, we follow the adventures of four fun-loving gals: Candy, Vanessa Hudgens; Britt, Ashley Benson; Cotty, Rachel Corrine, the wife of director Harmony Corrine; and Faith, Selena Gomez. Lacking the cash for a trip to sun-drenched Florida, the four have no compunctions about robbing a fast food restaurant before heading south to party, and party they do, attired in the briefest of bikinis, until they wind up in court. Well, there's more than one way to look at this movie. On one level, it's unmitigated trash, violent sexploitation, nonsense in the extreme. On another, it's been compared to, of all people, Jean-Luc Godard in its playful indulgence in the famous New Wave director's maxim about the basis of a movie being a girl and a gun. The presence in the cast of a couple of Disney alumni adds interest, and the rather curious character of Faith, who claims to be a Christian but who's up for a good time along with the others, is intriguing. The flashy photography is by Benoit Deby, who has worked with Gaspar Noé. As for Harmony Corrine, he started out writing the screenplay for Larry Clark's Kids and subsequently directed out there movies like Gummo, Julian Donkey Boy and Trash Humpers. Now, I haven't yet seen Trash Humpers, to my shame, but after Spring Breakers, I can hardly wait. I can't make up my mind about Spring Breakers. Is it nothing more than an update on how to stuff a wild bikini? Or is it profound? Margaret, enlighten me.
If only I could, David. But the opening scene of this, in Florida, with all those girls with their tits hanging out and sucking on popsicles in a most suggestive way, it's like a filmmaker's wet dream. And this is Corrine's most accessible film. I think we've got to say that. And it is bizarrely enjoyable on one level. I think James Franco plays this funny thing of being dangerously pathetic. He is pathetic.
James Franco is good at it.
Oh, he's terrific, actually. Yeah. And it's sort of like this psychedelic delving into a sort of Fellini-esque world. It's more, Godard, Fellini, but it's Satyricon, almost in its overindulgence.
Well, I must say that didn't occur to me. But maybe I should go and see it again with Satyricon and Fellini in mind.
Corrine really pushes the boundaries, and I think there's talent there, mischievous talent.
Yeah.
I'm going to give him 3.5 stars.
I'm giving it 3.
This isn't why we came here.
Spring Breakers opens in limited release around the country this week. One of the most acknowledged classics of cinema is Jean Renoir's 1939 film La Règle du Jeu, The Rules of the Game, and it's the one I've chosen for this week. The weird thing about this film is its initial reception. When it premiered in Paris, it was denounced. It was a terrible failure, devastating for Renoir. He cut it, but subsequently it was banned by the French and Vichy governments because it was seen as demoralising. Renoir had gone to Alfred de Musset's Les Caprices. It begins with the triumphant arrival of aviator juror Roland Toutain in Paris after a non-stop flight from New York. He's devastated that the woman he loves, Christine, Nora Gregor, is not there to meet him. Well, it's no wonder, because she's married to Robert, Marcel Dalio, a rich Jewish aristocrat, who decides he's in love with his wife and is just ending a 3-year liaison with his mistress, Mila Parley. All these people, along with many other guests, including Octave, played by Renoir himself, gather at Robert's country place for a week's hunting and partying.
Monsieur Jurieux, je sens que vous êtes arrivé à vos fins. Vous êtes en train de me voler ma femme. Non, lâchez-les. Accordez-moi 5 minutes d'entretien. Voilà, je prie. D'accord, canard. J'ai fini. Excusez-moi.
Je n'en peux plus.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
Il y a que je viens de dire à ton ami André que je l'aime.
Enfin, c'est pas malheureux. Tu l'aimes vraiment?
Je ne sais pas, je ne sais plus.
Déjà? Qu'est-ce qu'il a fait?
Il m'a parlé. quelques convenances. Elle m'a proposé d'aller passer un mois avec sa mère à la campagne pour qu'il puisse régler la situation avec la chaîne.
Tu t'attendais à quoi?
Ah, ce qu'il me prenne dans ses bras. Qu'il m'embrasse, qu'il m'emmène.
The film is seamless. Renoir's use of deep focus, allowing background incidents to play a role. His ability to keep so many characters in focus in this multi-stranded farce is masterful. It is a comedy of manners, but at heart, the manners are not very comic, neither upstairs nor below stairs. David.
There's a line in the film that I like. It something like, "We live in a time where everything is a lie," and I think that almost sums up this really fascinating film. And as we said earlier this evening, films reflect the time and the place where they're made.
Yes.
And this very much reflects that period just before the disaster in France, because it was completed just before the outbreak of war. And when Renoir was making the film, he said that he couldn't make up his mind whether he wanted to make a comedy or a tragedy. And the resulting film is, as he put it, as it is. Which is like, I guess, a sort of mixture of the two. And I think audiences at the time, it wasn't only political things that upset them, this sort of assault on the bourgeoisie, but it was also maybe a confusion over the mood of the film, which goes between drama and farce.
And there's a lot of tragedy. Irony in this film.
And a lot of
too.
irony too, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is a truly wonderful film. And Renoir, who of course was the son of Auguste Renoir, the painter, is one of the most important filmmakers, I think, of all time.
And there's irony in this final scene that we're going to show you tonight, where Robert sort of virtually hands over his wife to Joriot.
J'aime Christine. Ah, moi, je ne l'aime pas. Et moi, je l'aime tellement que je veux qu'elle parte avec vous. Puisque son bonheur est, paraît-il, fonction de ce départ. Mais je veux vous dire aussi que je me félicite qu'elle soit tombée sur quelqu'un de notre milieu. Ah, dans tout ça... Dans tout ça, merci. Là, dans tout ça, il y a une chose qui me chiffonne. Et c'est votre profession. Qu'est-ce qu'elle est ma profession? Mais Christine est habituée à un certain train de vie. Vous êtes jeune, vous avez la gloire, mais vous pouvez avoir un accident. Ah, je vous remercie, vous êtes gai. Oh, hélas, il faut tout prévoir. Quelle serait dans ce cas votre situation de fortune?
La Règle du Jeu, it's really quite an extraordinary film, and to think that it was nearly lost for all time. Next week, we'll be looking at another French classic, very different one, Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot's Holiday.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to seeing that again. Haven't seen it for years, and that's the show for tonight. Good night from us.
Good night.